Hey friends, Jasmine Lucero here, and today I wanted to ask you a question. Have you ever wondered what makes herbs work the way they do? I know that most of us take herbs every day, but do we really stop and think, what makes this herb do what it's doing in my body? So I really started thinking about this because my husband asked me, he's like, how do herbs work? And so I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to make a short video and explain a few things because you may have the same question as well. A little bit of back information. So, herbs, or any plants for that matter, contain a lot of phytochemicals in them. And you have primary constituents and secondary constituents. So, the primary constituents are going to be things like protein, carbohydrates, and lipids that are in the plant. And then you'll also have maybe vitamins or minerals in the plant. And then the secondary constituents are going to be other chemicals that are in the plant. And all the chemicals in the plant kind of work synergistically together. So I know that, a lot of scientists have studied a lot of different plants, and they're always looking for these specific constituents that they can extract from the plant and then have, a standardized dose of that. So like turmeric, for example, they've taken curcumin from the turmeric, and now you can get a standardized dose of coumarin. But for most plants, there are constituents that work like that on their own, they produce an action on their own. But for me, I really feel like for the most part, God made the plants to work synergistically, all those chemicals to work synergistically. So when we pull something out, sometimes it can be fine. Like I use essential oils; those are constituents that have been pulled out of a plant. But the best way is the plant, I think. So there might be a time or a place for some of these other constituents that are singled out, but I feel like on the whole, it's best if all those, constituents stay together and are used as a whole. I think they work well with the body. That way, I think that there's less chance of any safety concerns, if the plant is left as a whole. Now, that's, again, I'm not saying that's how it always has to be, but I think it is better. Now, these secondary constituents, there can be hundreds of them. Some of them we probably don't even know about. But some of them we do know about, and some of them are very well studied, and you can take entire classes on the plant constituents and learn these really in depth. But I just want to share a few with you so you kind of get an idea of what these constituents might be, what they could do. So the first one that I want to talk about are tannins. And tannins are very astringent, and an example of a plant that is very high in tannins would be oak. You might use it as oak bark, or I have a lot of oaks here in our property, so I usually just get oak leaves and I use those. I kind of boil mine or simmer them in a decoction, and that water that's left is very astringent. So you can use that. I use it for poison ivy, and I'll place that water on the poison ivy rash and help dry that up. And that astringency is very drawing, very tightening. So that is tannins. And the other things, you think of like a banana that is not quite ripe, that's very high in tannins. So tannins are very common. They're in a lot of plants, and depending, tea has a lot of tannins in it. Red raspberry leaf has a lot of tannins. Blackberry leaf, a lot of tannins. So these would be used for things that you need to tighten and tone and maybe dry up. So thinking like diarrhea. Use blackberry leaf for diarrhea. You want to tighten things up and stop the diarrhea. Some other secondary constituents would be your aromatic volatile oils. And we know these as essential oils, but they're volatile oils. They evaporate very easily. Um, Volatile oils are usually very antimicrobial. You will find them in plants, especially in the mint family. Think of the things that smell, a lot. So rosemary, lavender, catnip, your mints, anything that, when you rub your hand on it and you can smell your hand and it smells really strongly of that herb, then those are your volatile oils. And so you can have different actions based on the constituents. So that is one way that herbalists choose herbs and use the herbs for their clients or for themselves and their family, is they'll see what action they need, and then they find herbs that will produce those actions. So just like what I was saying, like if I needed an astringent herb, I would look for one that was high in tannins. And sometimes you may not know, like, oh, I may not know about tannins, but through experience, you might know, oh, this herb is a very astringent herb. And the tannins are the reason why it's astringent. Now, some herbalists also use herbs not based on what is in them, but based on the properties of the herbs. So they may say, oh, what are the energetic properties of the herbs? And when I first started learning herbalism, I was a little skeptical of, anything that had the word energy in it. I was like, is this something, that was more new age, or I wasn't sure what it was. But once I started learning and realizing what they were talking about, is really the energetics are just the properties of the herbs. What does the herb do in the body? So, for instance, you may have a warming herb, or you may have a cooling herb. You may have a drying herb or a moistening herb. So those are another way that the herbs kind of work, and they could be working that way based on their constituents, but I may not know what their constituents are. So for me, it's a little bit easier to work off the energetics, the properties of the herbs, because then I can usually tell what those are a little easier, usually just by tasting the herb. So if I taste the herb, I may not know, oh, it has tannins in it, but like I said, it's astringent, it's drying, and I can taste that, I can feel that drying effect in my mouth. If I had, a mucilaginous herb, put it in water, I may not know what compounds are causing that to be mucilaginous, but I can look at those properties and be like, oh, it's, very slimy, very demulcent. It's very moistening to the tissue. The same for warming and cooling. If you've ever had ginger, you know that that's a very warming herb. Some of the cooling herbs may be lemon balm, peach leaf, so things like that. And if you drink the tea, you'd be like, oh, it kind of cools me down. It kind of slows down the processes in my body. So that is, I tend to work more from the properties of the herbs and not so much from the chemical constituents, because I don't know. I have studied the chemical constituents, but to me, it's a little bit more intuitive to use the properties, because they're more tangible to us. We can feel it, we can see it, and it's good to know the science behind it. But it's a little bit more practical in use if we're doing something hands-on, and we can really taste it and feel it and be like, oh, this is a warming herb, this is a cooling herb. And so that's basically what it comes down to. So if you have more questions, please send them to me, and I'd love to try to cover them on another video. All right, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.